It's the year 2024, and we are going to talk about PlayStation and the future going forward. Because, to be honest with you guys, the future of PlayStation is about to change. The way you know PlayStation is going to change drastically in the coming years. I would even say the next 3 years are probably going to be the most drastic turn for PlayStation games you've ever seen. So let's get into it. So first off, let's talk about budgets. Oh, those things we all love. You can only spend so much money because you only have so much with a budget. Well, PlayStation games are very freaking expensive. Like, we are talking a ridiculous amount that these games cost. Thanks to the Insomniac leaks, we know the budget of several games. Games like The Last of Us Part 2 were kind of on the smaller budget side. Kind of, because $200+ million is still a lot of money, and that's not even including games like Spider-Man 2, Horizon Forbidden West, and so on and so forth. Many of these games cost a ridiculous amount of money. That's because everything's going up in price. So how does Sony, kind of counteract this cost? Well, honestly, they really don't. They basically bank on these games to sell a buttload of copies. And they expect them to sell a buttload of copies in a very short amount of time. Like, we're talking a year at most. Like, that's the most they will give a game until they decide, hey, we're going to start putting this shit on discount racks. We're going to start putting this shit in bundles. We're going to put it everywhere we can because we need the game to be, quote-unquote, profitable, even if they are technically taking a profit hit. Games like The Last of Us Part 2 also got a lot of controversy because there was a lot of refunds. So that's kind of weird how The Last of Us Part 2 had actually been a very profitable game, but from what I recall there were a lot of, refunds. So it makes me really wonder how the hell these numbers all add up. But like I said, because of this leak, we know that games cost a lot of money. And the PlayStation motto has always been, or at least since the late PS3 going forward, it's always been big blockbuster games. 100% go balls into the blockbusterness. Make these the closest thing they could be to cinematic experiences, like movies, for example. Uncharted 2 got a lot of praise because it was like a movie. It was like the Indiana Jones movie we all wanted. Last of Us Part 1 got a lot of praise because it was like a very emotional, story-driven TV show. And so on and so forth. Sony basically took the motto of The Last of Us and applied it everywhere where they could. You see it in games like God of War, you see it in games like Ghost of Tsushima, you see it in games like Returnal, so on and so forth, but the gameplay varies. Sony tried very hard to establish an identity. They're the big blockbuster, games. And I keep going to that, that term, blockbuster, because these games cost a ridiculous amount to make. And they have to make a lot of money in return. And, for the most part, we've been fortunate. We've been fortunate Sony isn't putting a bunch of microtransactions. We're lucky that they have been very fair with the DLC prices. Even more recently, they've been just giving away DLC that could easily cost $20 and people would probably have paid for it for free in God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. So it makes you really wonder, what is their plans going forward? And of course, we have to talk about this. And I do actually agree with a recent article that came out from an analyst where, we're talking about games of service. We do not like games of service over here in TPG land for the most part. We like Fortnite, and that's about it, because every other games of service game that comes out just flops. But if you guys know anything about Jim Ryan and what he was planning, he was basically planning Sony going, again, I keep using balls here, but balls deep into the games of service program. To the point that apparently at one point, there was at least 12 games of service games planned to be released by the 2026. Actually, I think it might have been 2027. I'm not 100% sure. But since Jim Ryan is stepping down as the head of PlayStation, guess what? Now that some of those games are getting pulled back. Games like the rumored Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse or Spider-Verse, multiplayer game, canceled. The Horizon MMO We don't know for sure if this thing's been canceled yet, but there's been nothing about it really. But there's also been like a recent leak, or I guess it's not technically a leak, but there was like some leaking posts where it was like an other Horizon game. So maybe there's 2 Horizon games made. But by the way, apparently Horizon Zero Dawn was Sony's most profitable game ever. I'm starting to see why they really pushed Aloy into the spotlight there. But going back to that, just really at the end of the day, the games of service model is not going to work for PlayStation. We just know it's not going to work for them because we see the graveyard of games that, that have just come out as games of service. And some of these games are actually pretty damn good, like Knockout C. And what happened in Knockout C? Game wasn't even out on the market for a full year, canceled, done. They're shutting down the servers completely. Which really tells you we have a problem with games of service. And now there's actual analysts out there who believe now games of service are just not a sustainable model because just how many of these games come out in such a fast period of time. We went from having Fortnite being like the first like real game service game to like hundreds of these things coming out, and none of these games are succeeding and they're flopping. And Sony was looking at that and thinking, oh, we might be the different one. We might be the one who breaks the streak. But even then, they were doing that at the risk of, turning their studios into these games of service studios that just, it won't work. It will not work for them. Naughty Dog was talking about how they would have to change their entire identity, their entire catalog of upcoming games just in order to keep the Last of Us multiplayer project going for the foreseeable future. And I'm being honest here, I'd rather have The Last of Us Part 3 than a live service Last of Us game. I know some people out there want, these live service games. They want Sony to bring back these old IPs and, make this Resistance multiplayer game. They want to make a Mad game, Warhawk, whatever. Let's be honest here, guys. Let's just be honest here. Do you really think bringing back Mag, Resistance, Sly Cooper, whatever, really is going to bring in the money Sony is looking for? It's not. It's just that's the sad truth we live in. Sony is profit driven. They're not as big as Microsoft. They're not as wide known as Nintendo. So honestly, it makes sense that they're all about what products are sustainable, which one can keep them going for the next couple years. Because honestly, I think at this point Sony's kind of worried about their future because VR is not taking off the way they think it should have. The PlayStation Portal, while doing good supposedly, it's also just kind of there. It's just that's kind of been their problem for the last couple years. Is that any meaningful investments they actually make into like the future of gaming just doesn't really pay off the way they think. They think they're gonna strike gold like Nintendo did with the Nintendo Switch and like this whole mobile gaming platform, but they don't have that freaking, what's the best way to put it? They don't have that record. They don't have that belief, and they don't have the revenue to keep investing into this stuff forever. They have to look at what's profitable and say, we need to stick to that. And it's been Blockbuster games. It's been the thing that's, like I said, since the late PS3 generation, that's been keeping them in the game. It's been keeping them in the mindset of a lot of people. But it costs a shit ton to make. So it's like, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a scary prospect. We are now, because again, a lot of this comes from the Insomniac leaks. We know Sony spent a crazy amount of money just to keep X-Men and Spider-Man off other platforms. They spent a ridiculous amount on that. They didn't get it as part of like a, here, Sony and Marvel working together, there's some exclusivity. No, Sony had to pay out the fucking wazoo to get these licenses. And these are for games that we won't see for a while. So where's the profit in all of it? So yeah, do not be shocked if you see a Spider-Man 2 Complete Edition. Do not be shocked if you see a solo Venom game and all this stuff. Games that at the end of the day are much smaller scale. I think that's the way they have to go at this point. They have to make these smaller scale games to keep the players enticed, and they have to keep re-releasing the same games because it's already done. Why not just put it on the PC? And for record, I'm going to say this too, and this is probably something that's going to piss people off. I definitely see day and date games coming to PC. I see Sony saying, hey, we're going to put PlayStation games on PC the same date as PC. In fact, we're kind of already getting that with Helldivers too. Yeah, that's not a PlayStation game. It's not a first-party game, but it does have the PlayStation Studios logo on it. So that means something. That means a PlayStation game is going to play PC and freaking PlayStation the same day. So don't be shocked if they do that with their bigger games. Like, don't be surprised if Wolverine comes to PC day and day. Because they're also seeing that PC games are pretty damn profitable. They don't hit, as big as, the console versions, but they still hit well. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Like, this gives them a chance to double dip on the same game. Like I said, I know I'm ranting and rambling here. Probably got a lot of dead air. Probably hear me smacking my lips on because my lips are dry. But that's my honest thoughts about the future of PlayStation. I'm not trying to sit here and be doom and gloom. I think that PlayStation has a good future, but it's not the way we're used to things. Things are about to change, and they're going to change drastically. And honestly, I feel like at this point, for a lot of people out there who just sit there to complain, it's time to either, buy a PlayStation or just play on PC. Because that's kind of the benefit of them doing day and day. It's like, you don't have to have a PlayStation to play PlayStation games. That's what's cool. That's what I think will save them and down the long road, is the fact that you don't need a console. So Sony doesn't have to make a console. They only have to make games. So they don't have to worry about putting out a piece of plastic every couple of years just to keep the power narrative. We're approaching a point where cloud gaming is very much a thing happening. We're already seeing it in certain sectors, like with Xbox and other freaking, platforms out there. We're going to see the day where Sony says, we're not doing consoles anymore. We're just going to do a subscription service where you could play a plethora of our games and you'll get those brand new games the day they come out for a subscription price. Do not be surprised in the slightest when you see the next PlayStation being a glorified stream stick. That's just where we're going. It's just how the future is. Sony is going to look to cut the cost. Don't be surprised too if they start, cutting studios, or studios get a sizable reduction. Don't be surprised if you hear about Ben Studios working solely with Naughty Dog because Naughty Dog needs help with their next big project, or being a support studio in general. Don't be surprised if you don't see a new game from them. Don't be surprised if we never see Days Gone get a native PS5 version. Because honestly, Days Gone wasn't that super successful. Well, according to the leaks that came out, it was pretty successful, but it wasn't successful for PlayStation. So it's like, the future of PlayStation is scary, just like the future for anyone. And it comes with the inevitability that things are changing. So until next time, guys, this is That PlayStation Gamer signing out. Hoping you all have a good day. What do you think of this video? Do you think I have too much dead air here? I'm seeing the recording and Christ almighty. I'm not very good at this shit. But yeah. I also think the future, like I said, it's not scary, but it's unknown. And that's the worst part of it all. It's not, I think I heard this expression. I could face death knowing when it's coming. But when I do not know when death comes, that's when I'm most scared. So until next time, peace out, blah, 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 blah. YouTube algorithm, BS, bye, bye, bye.